Lauren Speranza is an expert on transatlantic defense and security at the Center for European Policy Analysis, and she is at the Munich Security Conference, where she joins us from. So good to have you with us. This crisis is not going away. There has been no meaningful de-escalation, according to U.S. intelligence. With tensions surging back up, has this crisis laid bare the West's powerlessness in the face of Russia?
Well, I think you're right that the crisis is sort of escalating. I think trust is at such a low point between the West and Russia right now, which is why I'm very skeptical of some of the calls that we hear coming from the U.S., hoping that Russia would make a formal declaration or sign some kind of statement that it will not invade Ukraine. The Kremlin does not have a strong record of upholding its international commitments, and so I think pleas for that are just not the best way forward, and I am very skeptical of the possibility for a diplomatic solution. I think despite what the Kremlin has been saying about it not wanting a war, its actions are suggesting exactly the opposite. It is not withdrawing forces, it is reinforcing the equipment and the force posture that it has near Ukraine, but also in Belarus. And I think Putin has very clearly decided not to take what he can get from the current negotiations and package that as a win to the Russian people. Instead, he has chosen to continue to demand maximalist things that he knows are non-starters for the West. He has exported U.S. diplomats from Russia, continuing to plant these false flag operations to create a pretext for invasion. And I think he's clearly chosen not to take the diplomatic path so far.
It's really interesting. You raise a couple of really interesting points, especially that on skepticism, because there seems to be a dissonance. I mean, a couple of dignitaries who opened the security conference where you are were talking about values and our values. But Mr. Putin is not interested in the West's values. So do you think there's a disconnect there?
Yes, I mean, I think this is fundamentally about so much more than just Ukraine or even the question of NATO membership. Really, this is a struggle between the way we organize our societies. It's a fight between democracy and authoritarianism, and clearly Russia is forcing this agenda because of its authoritarian aggression, that it wants to roll back the current international liberal order and the security architecture that's created by NATO and the United States. And it's very difficult to talk about values because that is not in Putin's interest. And so I think there is a disconnect between what we're trying to achieve through negotiations and what Mr. Putin is realistically willing to entertain.
Before I let you go, a final question. If a Russian invasion takes place in the next couple of days, and depending on the conditions on the ground, do you foresee a scenario where allies and the people who are there now at the Munich Security Conference would reconsider, maybe revisit coming to Ukraine's aid militarily?
So I think the West has put up a very impressive set of plans, contingency plans, so that they are prepared to assist Ukraine, even if that's not necessarily with boots on the ground inside Ukrainian territory. I think there's a very serious sanctions package that is ready to go and has been sort of pre-negotiated among allies so we can act very quickly. I think there's a lot of training and security assistance, weapons, other things that Western allies and partners are providing to Ukraine already and will continue to do so. I think that it's unlikely that we will see kind of U.S. or NATO troops inside Ukraine, but I do think there is a possibility for escalation or spillover from something that could happen in Ukraine that could potentially involve NATO allies. And if that is the case, then we certainly will see a more swift and robust response from the NATO alliance.
Lauren Speranza, transatlantic defense and security expert at the Center for European Policy Analysis. So good to have you with us. Thank you for your time.